I think you do a really good job of explaining how this erasure of women and mothers is intentional. So, can you explain how a patriarchal society benefits from writing women, particularly Black women and women of color, out of history?
Absolutely. And I'll start by defining also, I think it's a good time to say why American patriarchy, why I'm specifying here, because I've seen patriarchal systems operate across the world. They exist in a lot of different places. And I'm not interested in necessarily saying which one is better or worse than the other. I think they're all bad. But in order for us to actually dismantle them, we have to focus in on the particular nation that we're speaking about, who the founding fathers or the people of that nation were, the documents that they wrote. Obviously, in our case, it's the Constitution, and how through those documents, they're defining what it means to be human in that nation. And so, in order to answer this question, we have to see how our founding fathers were defining what it meant to be human in the US and how they set up this fabricated binary that we were talking about. And so, we know that in the Constitution, they say that men are the ones who can vote, men are the ones who are supposed to hold power over other people and control their dependents. Men can enter into business decisions and represent themselves without anybody having to speak for themselves for them. Men are the ones who can own land, for example. We know that women are not in the Constitution at all. They're not mentioned in the Constitution, but just based off of letters that the founding fathers write to their daughters, to their wives, to the people about the women in their lives, they define women as those who are fragile, those who deserve protection, those who need to be controlled because they can't think for themselves, and those whose identities get usurped by the men in their lives, whether it's their fathers or their husbands. And so we see from this initial problematic binary that this is only including a very specific group of people, and it's people who look similar to our founding fathers. And so when the founding fathers won the Revolutionary War, they were very concerned that this revolutionary spirit was spreading across the country, and they wanted to instill control because they didn't want to lose what they had fought for, which was to have power in their nation. So this is why they set up this system. So it starts off as their opinion of how order should look in their nation, and then it becomes systematized. And so from the beginning, it's just kind of a made up thing, but then it becomes real through our laws, through our Constitution. So we see from these two definitions, obviously, so many men are being left out, even in the definition of men. Of course, men who are enslaved at the time are not being included in this definition. We see that Indigenous men would not be included in this. We see that immigrant men would not be included in this. We also see that poor white men are not being included in this. We then see that, particularly in the case of how they're defining women, they're directly excluding Black women, very specifically, because when we look at how enslaved women were treated, if they came to have children, for example, those children would carry the status of the mother. Even though we're told by the Constitution and by this definition of man that women solely reproduce the power of men and the legacy of men. And so we start to see that there's already this setup from the beginning that tells us that we either can be this dominant white man, cisgendered man, rich man, or we can be the women who are their dependents who reproduce that power through children. And then everybody else is told that you simply can assimilate as closely as possible to these two groups, and then maybe you will know what it is to feel like a human being in the United States. So it's set up from the beginning that we're all fighting for our right to be gendered in this problematic problem. So all of that is the background in terms of really any question that'll come up around what benefit is there to excluding Black women from our definition of leader, from our definition of a person who contributes to our society, is that it counters this original definition of what it means to be human in our nation. And it really specifically happens with Black women because we were the furthest away from this American patriarchal setup. We were pushed away from it, cast away from it. And so anything that challenges that, anything that shows us that again is made up, even to this day, if we're looking at book bans, all of these kinds of erasure point to a need to maintain that this order is the only way that we can operate. It's the natural order of things. It's unavoidable. It's undeniable. And so Black women have so often been the foil to American patriarchy.